This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 251 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. This week is another deep dive episode. I'm interviewing Penny Rafferty in my series of deep dives into thoughtful travel. So I have heard Penny speak before at events, and I knew I wanted to chat with her because of her super thoughtful approach to travel. Penny is currently Head of Sustainability for Tourism Australia, as well as being the Executive Director of Luxury Lodges of Australia. So, yes, she's busy, and it took us a couple of months for our calendars to be in sync enough to have this chat. But it was worth the wait. We had quite a long chat, so I won't dither about, and I want to dive right in to our conversation. And we started off by finding out more about Penny's background.
I ran away from university when I finished my degree and joined the opera, not as a singer, but the performing arts, working in the arts, led me to publishing, led me to South Africa, back to the arts ostensibly, but it was to set up a performing arts festival post-apartheid on a wine farm outside of Stellenbosch.
Wow.
And that sort of got me into the emergence of tourism and culture, and where tourism and culture meet at a really quite extraordinary time for South Africa. You know, Mandela was president. They'd won the World Cup rugby. It was hope, a time of incredible hope for South Africa. So it's a really extraordinary time to be there. I was charged with, as it was paraphrased by the owner of the festival and wine farm, I was charged with trying to get corporate South Africa to think about the arts the way they thought about sport. So I'm not entirely sure I succeeded in that, but there were definitely some wins, and it was a really incredible time. So this ended up being a 5-month performing arts festival, which was a tourism attraction in itself. When I came back to Australia in 2000, was consulting, and one of the first gigs I landed was with what was then the See Australia initiative, which wasn't actually a tourism initiative. It was a social change initiative to get Australians to take their annual leave. So it was all about mental health, people not taking leave, rising stress levels, rising liabilities on corporate bottom line. And so it was a social change initiative. So from that, ended up in the Barossa Valley, helping to restore a heritage winery, which is a bit of a tourism destination, and then ended up being the general manager at the new Louise, which was the old Pepper's Hermitage that Jim Carragher had ripped apart, rebuilt, and turned into a luxury vineyard retreat. And that was my first job really in sort of the accommodation and tourism experiences that weren't directly wine or arts related. Mm-hmm. The Louise ended up being the birthplace of Luxury Lodges of Australia, which has really been my second child, really. It's my baby since its inception. So we approached a number of the other owners of luxury lodges, like Alla Wolf Tasker at Lake House, James and Hayley Bailey. Philippa Harrison, who's now MD at Tourism Australia, was then the general manager of sales and marketing for Hamilton Island, so Qualia. Nice. Charlie Carlo, Wild Bush Luxury, and they came to the Barossa on the 1st of September 2009, and we had a discussion around could we form an association to be a collective marketing voice for us? If so, what would it look like? If so, how would it work? And within about 3 hours, we had really got to the gist of what was a luxury lodge and how was it different just to an accommodation, but the sustainability element of it. All of the lodges are more than just a place to stay. So they line up with the reason why people come to a place, the triggers for why people travel, which is really inherently related to natural environments, different cultures, local in terms of provenance of food, and the people of the place.
Mm-hmm.
So the stories that are, and the knowledge, the skill, the craft that is relayed by the hosts, the guides, the people of the place, and the connections you make. So it was a no-brainer to try to elevate the stories that were nurturing all of that and protecting all of that as part of a guest experience. So otherwise, what are we doing? Soaring off the branch we're sitting on. Mm-hmm. So it was a no-brainer. And it was really interesting over sort of a period of the last 4 or 5 years, have worked with the lodges to help them to articulate their legacy stories. So really easy ones are like the Private Wildlife Conservancy at Arkaba, Charlie Carlo turning Pastoral Station to a wildlife conservancy. What did that mean for biodiversity return? How measurable is their impact? How engaging is it as part of the guest experience? But also the rising awareness of the mandatories around sustainability that aren't really that sexy, but are increasingly expected by people. So no single-use plastics. Why on earth would you fly in asparagus from Mexico when it could be grown locally? And really, but also aligning that again with the things that excite guests around learning about seasonality, learning about what comes from a place, what makes a place individual. Nobody ever finishes a trip going, thread count on the sheets was amazing. No. They always finish a trip talking about, what did I learn? How did I connect? Who was that person that taught us, this incredible fact about the wildlife that we were watching? Or what did we, how did it change me?
Yeah. Yeah. What's unique about this experience compared to all of the other places I could have gone or have been? That uniqueness is what people really take away with them, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the personal measure of uniqueness. It's that personal measure of surprise. So there's no barometer for it.
No.
People get different things out of travel, which is what is so extraordinary about it. So so that was my path through arts, wine, tourism, sustainability, and now obviously helping to develop Tourism Australia's approach to sustainability, which again has the internal mandatories. What does the business do? But it also has, we are the marketing voice for a destination. So how do we elevate and champion the stories of our tourism industry, the people that are nurturing, protecting, elevating, regenerating, restoring the assets that make Australia so appealing? And how is that part of the experience, that the conscious rise in conscious, mindful, thoughtful traveller, how is it appealing to them? So connecting the dots between what our operators are doing and this veritable tidal wave of intention around, got to do better, travel better. What does my holiday dollar do?
Hey, do you think there's a lot of intention that I hear from people? And obviously here in Australia, we can't travel much, certainly not abroad at the moment. But I see in the Northern Hemisphere, people are starting to travel all over the place. And, in the last 12, 18 months, a lot of people have been talking more about travelling better. But I kind of see them just hopping on a plane again and travelling just as bad as they did before. But, so what are your thoughts on how much this intentionality is going to be turning into reality, I guess?
I guess that depends how much leadership is shown. If people intend to travel better or live better, there certainly before COVID, there was data that showed rise in people's understanding of and actual action on things like recycling, on the shift to electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles, on massive shift in people actually carbon offsetting flights. Skyscanner have a function on their website which says choose the greener option. And they had seen an escalated number of people choosing the greener option. So that was already happening pre-COVID, but we did know that global, and this isn't just Australia, this is globally, that yes, people did often park their intentions when it came to choosing a holiday because, hey, holidays where we restore, it's what we deserve. And there's a lot of data that actually shows. There's a Euromonitor report as well as some Booking.com data with some really big base numbers that is showing that during COVID, the already elevated intention to actually travel better and more consciously has elevated again.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a growing expectation that businesses will be doing things to make their footprint less. There is a growing expectation that governments will lead. And I think the Planet report that came out this week for the world is I think it's a watershed moment, because
so.
business is already leading, and there are some governments around the world that are also already leading. France has legislated against people being able to do flights where you can catch a train that takes less than 2 hours. Same.
Wonderful. Yeah.
The cost of impact is going to start to become very apparent to businesses and individuals as the world shifts to a lower footprint economy.
Mm-hmm.
So we can either work at it now and make those longer term costs less, and also I think at a time when there's massive change and pressure on a tourism industry in somewhere like Australia, there's increasing evidence that businesses that have better impact on the people that work for them, the community that they work in, the environment that they work in, and are profitable, are generally better run businesses. So are likely to be the survivors and thrivers at the end of this.
So economics has caught up with our kind of thoughtful approach, perhaps, and it can work in our favour now.
I hope it's part of the rising tide.
Yeah. Fingers
we'll
crossed. Yeah.
But just one quick thing. I think people also, when a travel experience makes them feel good, it's very often now not just about the self and the consumption. It is about the connection, and very often that connection is involved in a moment of learning and understanding. If you're on the reef, you're with a guide, you understand, you learn, you feel better, you feel more connected. You plant a tree at Walgam Valley, a little bit of you is there forever. You adopt an animal or support a wildlife sanctuary or hospital. You've kind of adopted an animal. There's a shift from bling and things to that kind of connectedness with travellers that is very, very, very enriching.
Yeah,
I hope it becomes addictive.
Yes, I hope so too. It's wonderful, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I anecdotally, I totally agree with everything you're saying, but I always worry that I'm in a bit of an echo chamber with, the listeners to my podcast are already, I'm preaching to the converted there. So, but to hear some more of the broader kind of stats and the broader thinking is good. All right. Now, I'm curious to dig deeper into how travel can change a person. So you kind of alluded to this already, but, I find travel has changed everything about me, my personality, and how I live my life. So I was wondering, can you give me an example of how you think travel can change an individual?
Understanding and accepting difference. So for me, one of the most powerful things about travel is going beyond the stereotypes that we see in media, particularly if we live in one country for an extended period of time, to really understanding more deeply different cultures, different people, different motivations. So for me, my husband and I we had a mature age gap year in 1999 and spent a lot of time in Turkey, Georgia, Armenia, and about a month in Iran.
Oh, wow.
We're lucky enough to see BAM before the earthquake destroyed it. Oh. And also spent quite a bit of time in Morocco. So we spent quite a bit of time in some largely Muslim countries. And, at the time, sort of my limited exposure to different religions, we didn't get to see the depth and the texture of different religions. And what I came away with was such a clear and first-hand experience of the generosity to strangers that was shown by largely Muslim countries, but also largely countries where the people who were showing the generosity were not terribly well off, you know, and that changed an entire perspective for me at a much younger age. I think that's one of the valuable things we can do for our children.
Yes.
Same with nature. You know, more recently, I had a fabulous day out on the reef this year, actually, when we could travel.
That brief window.
That brief window. And I was lucky enough to be on the Dreamtime snorkel and dive boat and had a snorkel with one of the master reef guides and one of the Indigenous guides.
Oh, wow.
And the combination, and it was beautiful because they threw the lead to each other to give their side of a story. And it was such a privilege to be snorkeling with people who could just deepen my knowledge of a place that is, you know, yes, fragile, is magnificent, yes, has good regeneration stories, yes, is under threat and under the media spotlight a lot. But it was such a privilege to get a science-based reef guide, marine biologist perspective, as well as the perspective of some of our First Nations people for whom the way they live their life with the environment as one, as part of them, as custodian of, it was so apparent that day. And the whole totem system of this is my animal, my job is to protect this through my life, was so enriching and such a privilege to hear it firsthand.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds like my perfect day out. I've had the good fortune to be there with a master reef guide, but not with also an Indigenous guide. That sounds like just all the questions I would have and all the knowledge I would be able to glean just sounds marvelous. So that sounds very special.
Total privilege.
Those are, so thank you. They're perfect examples of travel, how life-changing it is. Now, the converse. So can we positively impact the world? You know, I interviewed a woman earlier this year who's written an entire book about how we shouldn't travel again because it is so bad for the world. But first of all, I think it's important that we do travel because it's good for us. But what kind of ways can an individual traveller actually positively impact the world?
Education for us, we're taking guests onto the reef is a really great one. So there's a deepened understanding of really what is happening on the reef, but there's also plenty of opportunity for citizen science, for guests to help with science projects that actually are long-term projects that are sped up because of the sheer volume of images that are uploaded to portals showing what is on the reef, where it is, helping scientists to actually understand the position. Conservation in Africa, you know, when there aren't travellers and visitors in a region that is protecting wildlife, there is still the problem of poaching. Mm-hmm. And the poachers almost have free rein when there's nobody else there to sort of limit their style.
And less money coming in to hire security and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I think actually for pretty much every local community that welcomes travellers to it, there is the opportunity for positive impact. One of the big hurdles that I think is a whole other podcast is the question of value versus cost and the mindset of travellers to get a deal and being able to differentiate between the not actually made here, handcrafted at all by the local community, but mass made somewhere else and shipped in, but in the same style and colours, differentiating between that and the integrity of product, but also being very happy to pay the correct value for that, not haggle on cost, because our perception of what things are worth has been so eroded by the ongoing discount cycle that is prevalent in a very, very consumer-driven world.
Yeah, and the impact of mass production products versus really quality handcrafted Yeah, which I would rather have any day. I would rather have something, I mean, where you can know something of the story of the maker, or, and you feel you're actually, contributing and helping in a significant way. Only a few weeks ago, I interviewed a guy in Kenya who until recently was one of the caretakers of the last northern white rhinos. And he had, it was a very emotional interview, but he had a lot very convincing to say about exactly that, with the conservation aspect, that they had really suffered by not having tourism there. Obviously, your expertise is Australia, and it's interesting. My audience is global, but I think it's interesting for everyone to hear more about Australian tourism, because Australia is a bit special, a bit unique. Where do you think Australian tourism will be? How will it be different in like 5 to 10 years? So post-COVID, things are opened up. What's going to be changed and hopefully better?
Okay, do you want my good dreams or my nightmares?
Oh. A little of the nightmares, a lot of the good dreams.
Certainly one of the big challenges facing tourism and hospitality across the country is our pipeline of staff, people who view tourism and hospitality as a career, not just a passing job.
Mm-hmm.
If we can shift the dial on that, then I think we will have the opportunity to deliver genuine Australian experiences that do protect all of our natural areas of appeal, so our natural environments, our wildlife, our cultures, First Nations and regional community cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing some work with that at the moment at Luxury Lodges, with some really cool interviews with some of the guides and staff who are career people. If we can crack that, then I think Australia has an incredible opportunity, because we are naturally isolated. We do have a small population. We are uncrowded. Many of the things and we have those incredible natural environments, both aquatic and land, and diversity of wildlife, and an extraordinary food and beverage scene that, you just don't even sort of think about calling it paddock to plate. There's such diversity, such regionality, such incredible rich bounty. We are very lucky. All of those things are really critical drivers for destination choice by a lot of travellers.
Mm-hmm.
If we can make sure that businesses are viable, because there is this rich culture of service as well, then I think we are in a very good place.
Okay. Anything else that you are dying to tell me or my listeners about travelling thoughtfully, or anything else from your experiences?
I'm hopeful that the shift towards thoughtful travel is fueled by a deeper shift that we're seeing across communities, which is the kindness, awareness, epidemic, bad word. The kindness revolution, I think, is how some people are referring to it. And I think that is one of the moments of wow and optimism that have come out of the pandemic, is the increased awareness of, is my neighbour okay? Oh, the little local baker. If I keep buying big manufactured bread, what happens to the little local baker when everyone's in lockdown? Maybe I should actually start buying my bread locally. I call it the sourdough phenomenon. The people that used to only have sourdough on Saturdays with their smashed avo felt like, hang on, I really enjoy that, and I'm not allowed out anymore, so I'm actually going to make my own. So they buy their own sourdough. The ones that were already doing that are making it, So there's been this sort of trading up effect. So I'm hoping that awareness of local and community and the kindness translates into a similar set of behaviours and awarenesses, which really is thoughtful. People being thoughtful when they travel as well, and not just assuming that the world is there for their extraction and taking.
Yeah. Oh, that is fabulous. And I hadn't quite put those things together. I completely agree about, like you described, the kindness revolution, and hadn't really put that together with, people might take that with them when they travel in the future. And that would be fabulous if more and more people travelled thinking with that kind of lens. So,
and I think the thing that will add to that, and it was already a trend that we were seeing pre-pandemic as well, was that rise of people taking their wellness and well-being with them on their travels. So taking their own practice of well-being with them on their travels. And I have some friends that I do have travelled with quite a bit for work, and we'd always joke that we're up early doing walks and doing yoga where we can and getting the work done, but still wanting to really enjoy a nice glass of wine at the end of the day. But we were still taking our wellness and well-being practice with us when we travelled. And I'm hoping that is a bit of a parallel with the kindness. Because if people are going to be kind to themselves, then the little reminder, touch point to be kind to others as well might hopefully live on.
I hope so. Well, let's hope that. Look, I think there is enough optimism out there that we've got to kind of turn all of this the bad part of this last couple of years into more good, because otherwise it all seems like a bit of a waste of time, doesn't it? So hopefully we can get that more thoughtful travel happening. So thank you, Penny. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute delight. I feel like we could talk for days.
I know. I would rather love to. Of course, all good chats must come to an end, and I hope you have enjoyed listening to my interview with Penny as much as I enjoyed conducting it. It was really lovely to chat with someone who's, the epitome of a thoughtful traveller, I suppose. As you know from the intro, Penny is the Executive Officer of the Luxury Lodges of Australia. So if you're curious to see which beautiful places around Australia belong to that, you can head to their website, luxurylodgesofaustralia.com.au. Of course, don't forget to come across to join either our Facebook group or our LinkedIn group, or both. We talk about different things in each group. You can find our Facebook group just by searching for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook. And in LinkedIn, the easiest way to find it is just to go to my shortcut link, which is at notaballerina.com/LinkedIn. All of these links will be in the show notes, of course. And for this episode, the show notes are at notaballerina.com/251. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.